Chapter 19: Nature's Deserts and Lakes, Extreme Saline Environments. 1. The Dead Sea Expedition, Density, Mists, and Siroccos. The Dead Sea represents the most extreme manifestation of the saline world. Lying at the lowest point on Earth's surface, this deep basin is a cauldron of evaporation. The waters of the Jordan River are trapped here, concentrated, until the salinity reaches nearly 34%, 10 times that of the open ocean. In 1848, Lieutenant William F. Lynch of the U.S. Navy led a daring expedition to map this desolate wonder. What they discovered was a landscape of unearthly physical properties. The most striking feature was the extreme density of the water. Because of high concentrations of magnesium, calcium, and sodium chlorides, the water behaves more like liquid metal than refreshing sea. Lynch recorded that his heavy metal boats sat high on the surface. The waves, when whipped up by wind, struck the hulls with the force of a hammer. For the human body, this density creates a buoyant miracle. A person cannot sink, must float atop the brine like a piece of cork. However, this saltiness is so aggressive it burns the eyes and lips. The bitter taste of the water is described as a chemical assault on the senses. The atmosphere of the Dead Sea is equally oppressive. The intense heat of the Jordan Rift Valley creates a constant saline mist. A shimmering haze of evaporated brine hangs over the water, distorting the light, creating mirages of cities in the distance. This is often accompanied by the sirocco, a scorching wind from the desert that feels like the breath of a furnace. As this wind passes over the salt plains, it carries microscopic salt crystals. They coat the skin and clothes of travelers in a gritty white shroud. The sensory reality of the Dead Sea is one of stagnant power. It is a place where life, in its visible form, cannot exist. Yet the water itself is thick with the potential for life's minerals. Lynch's expedition proved that the Dead Sea is not dead in the sense of being empty. Rather, it's a saturated sanctuary, a geological laboratory where the Earth's salt has been gathered and concentrated into primordial brine that defies the laws of the ordinary world. 2. The Pampas of South America, Las Salinas, and the Mirage. Deep within the heart of the Argentine Pampas lies a geological phenomenon, Las Salinas Grandes. These are not seas, but vast ancient lake beds. They have evaporated into colossal white deserts of pure salt, stretching toward the horizon like a frozen ocean. To the gauchos and explorers who traverse these plains, the Salinas are a world of blinding light and sensory deception. The salt crust acts as a giant mirror, reflecting the sky, giving birth to the most sophisticated mirages in the southern hemisphere. The physical structure of these salt plains is a crystalline marvel. The surface is composed of a hard, white crust, often several feet thick, naturally divided into hexagonal plates. This pattern is caused by the desiccation and contraction of the mud beneath the salt layer. For the traveler, the primary challenge is the blinding refraction. The pure white salt reflects nearly 90% of the intense South American sun, creating a glare so powerful it can cause snow blindness in a matter of hours. The heat trapped above the white surface creates a layer of shimmering air that distorts the horizon. The mirages of Las Salinas are legendary. A traveler may see what appears to be a vast blue lake filled with islands and palm trees only a mile away. However, as they approach, the water retreats, revealing itself to be nothing more than the reflection of the sky caught in a thermal inversion. This phantom water has lured many thirsty travelers to their doom. The sensory experience is one of profound isolation, a silence so absolute that the only sound is the crunch of the salt crust beneath one's boots. Historically, Las Salinas were the primary source of salt for the colonial cities of the Rio de la Plata. Caravans of heavy ox carts would venture onto the flats during the dry season to harvest the white gold. This chapter of natural history proves that salt can transform a landscape into a dreamscape. Las Salinas are a testament to the Earth's ability to create beauty from desiccation, proving that in the extreme corners of the Pampas, the mineral world can create a vision of the infinite. 3. The hot Sonda wind, a furnace from the salt plains. Closely linked to the saline deserts of South America is a meteorological terror, the Sonda. This is a dry, piercingly hot wind that descends from the Andes Mountains and sweeps across the salt plains of the Argentine interior. As the Sonda passes over the vast expanses of Las Salinas, it undergoes a transformation, picking up microscopic dust and salt particles until it becomes a saline furnace. The Sonda is more than just a wind. It is a physiological event that tests the limits of human and animal endurance. The characteristics of the Sonda are unique. It is a phone-type wind, meaning it warms as it descends in altitude. By the time it reaches the salt flats, its humidity has dropped to nearly zero. Its temperature can spike by 20 degrees in minutes. As it roars across the salt crust, it acts as a giant desiccator. It strips the moisture from everything it touches: the skin of the traveler, the leaves of the trees, the lungs of the livestock. The air becomes heavy with a static charge and fine salt dust, which irritates the respiratory system, creates a sense of profound nervous agitation. The sensory reality of the Sonda is the taste of grit and heat. The wind carries a peculiar metallic scent. The sky often turns a hazy orange-white as the salt dust scatters the light. Local folklore often attributes madness and irritability to the Sonda, and modern science confirms that the high ion concentration in the salt-laden air can indeed affect the nervous system. The hot Sonda proves that the influence of the salt plains is not confined to the ground. It rises into the atmosphere, turning the very air into a saline force that dictates the rhythm of life in the shadow of the Andes. 4. Salt licks of the United States, Onondaga and beyond. In the early history of North America, the locations of natural salt springs and licks were the most strategic points on the map. Long before European settlers arrived, the indigenous peoples and vast herds of bison and deer had carved great buffalo traces through the wilderness, all leading to the saline marshes of Onondaga, modern-day Syracuse, New York, and the licks of Kentucky. These sites were the mineral hearts of the frontier. For the young United States, the discovery and control of these inland salt sources were as vital to national security as the possession of iron or gunpowder. The Onondaga salt springs became the salt city of the New World. Unlike the sea salt works of the coast, the water here was a subterranean brine of extraordinary purity. During the early 1800s, Syracuse produced the vast majority of the salt used in the United States. This was fueled by the construction of the Erie Canal, often nicknamed the ditch that salt built. This inland supply allowed the American pioneers to preserve the beef and pork necessary for westward expansion. Without the Onondaga brine, the Great Migration across the Appalachians would have been stalled by the rot of the supply wagons. Further west, the Kentucky licks, such as Blue Licks and Big Bone Lick, were sites of intense biological activity. These were areas where saline water bubbled to the surface, saturating the clay. For millennia, animals had flocked here to eat the salty earth, to supplement their diets. These sites became famous as the graveyards of giants. Early explorers discovered the massive bones of prehistoric mammoths and mastodons embedded in the salt marsh mud. Creatures that had traveled hundreds of miles for the same mineral that the settlers now boiled in great iron kettles. The sensory reality of these licks was one of mineral pilgrimage. The ground around them was churned into deep ruts by the hooves of countless animals over countless generations. The air carried the scent of wet clay and brine, and the earth itself tasted of the primordial sea. The American salt licks prove that the location of salt determined the geography of both wildlife and civilization. They were the invisible magnets that pulled life across the continent. Before roads, before cities, before nations, there were the salt trails, and along those trails, the future of America was written. 5. Conclusion. Salt's geography of extremes. From the dense, bitter waters of the Dead Sea to the blinding white expanses of Las Salinas, from the hot, salt-laden winds of the Sonda to the muddy licks that drew mammoths across continents, salt creates landscapes of extremes. These are places where the normal rules don't apply, where water is too heavy to swim in, where air is too dry to breathe comfortably, where light is too bright to see without pain, where silence is so complete it becomes oppressive. Yet these extreme environments reveal something profound about salt. It is not passive, not merely a seasoning or a preservative. Salt is an active geological force. It shapes landscapes, influences weather, directs the movement of animals and humans alike. The saline environments of the world are laboratories where we can see salt's power in pure, concentrated form, where the mineral's influence is so dominant that it overwhelms all other factors. These places teach us that salt is fundamental to Earth's chemistry, to its physical structure, to the patterns of life that emerge and persist across the planet. When we study the Dead Sea, we see what happens when evaporation concentrates minerals beyond normal limits. When we walk across Las Salinas, we see how salt can create beauty from barrenness. When we feel the Sonda, we understand how salt can transform even the air we breathe. When we trace the buffalo trails to Onondaga, we see how salt has shaped migration patterns for millions of years. These extreme saline environments are not aberrations. They are windows into the essential nature of this mineral, into its power, its persistence, its ability to transform everything it touches. Salt creates deserts that shimmer like oceans, winds that taste of the sea, lakes where nothing sinks, springs that drew giants from prehistory. In these extreme places, salt shows its true nature, not as humble seasoning, but as elemental force, shaping the world, drawing life to itself, creating conditions so harsh they seem hostile, yet so rich in minerals they become pilgrimage sites for creatures great and small. This is salt's geography of extremes, a testament to its power, its ubiquity, its essential role in shaping not just our food and bodies, but the very face of the earth itself.